Empire of Death has numerous issues that prevent it from coming together properly. This critique will explore the inconsistencies and plot holes that plague the narrative, ultimately detracting from its potential impact. This detailed analysis will cover various aspects of the episode, from character motivations and plot coherence to the setting and atmosphere, providing a comprehensive critique of its shortcomings. Firstly, the character of Ruby's mother is problematic. In a story where magic has established rules, Ruby's mother being a no-one feels like a major oversight. Even belief-based magic systems require some internal consistency, yet the narrative fails to provide it. Previously, belief has worked at the edge of the universe where the fabric of reality wanes thin, or where there are 15 satellites.
Is that your weapon? Prayer!
Right across the world, one word, just one thought at one moment, but with 15 satellites.
Additionally, the scene where a character randomly points at a sign is confusing and the justification is weak. Who randomly points at a sign? You write the name in a cot. Why would someone randomly point at a sign? And how does naming her that way make logical sense? This seemingly minor detail highlights a larger issue with the narrative's logic. The story sets up certain expectations about how its magical elements work, and then it disregards those rules in ways that feel arbitrary and unearned. Furthermore, the importance of Ruby's mother within the magical framework of this story is not adequately explained. If the narrative had delved deeper into her background and significance, it might have provided a more satisfying explanation for her role. Instead, we are left with a character whose importance seems tacked on rather than integral to the plot. This undermines the story's internal logic and leaves the viewers questioning the coherence of the magic system. The motivations of Sutek are also questionable. When he realizes there is something unknown, his response to act immediately is illogical. As someone who has waited for so long, Sutek should be more cautious and strategic. A better ending would be for the goblins to be magical and misunderstood by Sutek, explaining his concerns. Sutek's actions should have reflected his long history of caution, making his sudden impulsivity inconsistent with his character. Moreover, Sutek's fear of the unknown seems out of character for someone who has supposedly been a master planner and schemer for eons. His immediate reaction to act rather than to observe and plan further a stark departure from how a character with his background should behave. This inconsistency not only detracts from his character development, but also weakens the overall narrative tension. A character like Sutek should embody the patience and foresight that come with his long history, and his actions should reflect these traits. The depiction of the TARDIS and the desolate planet is another area where the episode falls short. Russell T Davies has previously excelled at creating cozy, atmospheric scenes, such as the one with Martha and Jack having a chippy next to a dumpster fire. However, this episode lacks that warmth and depth, making the TARDIS feel too clean and sterile. The memory TARDIS, in particular, fails to capture the patchiness and messiness that should have been present. The coziness and worn-in feeling previously seen in episodes like Gridlocked is missing here, making the TARDIS environment feel artificial. Additionally, the atmosphere of the desolate planet is not effectively conveyed. The episode fails to create a sense of desolation and danger that should accompany such a setting. The visuals and sound design do not work together to immerse the viewer in this barren landscape. Instead, the planet feels like a backdrop rather than a living, breathing environment that impacts the characters and the story. This lack of atmospheric depth further detracts from the episode's overall effectiveness. Maybe, had they had a zoom out for the backdrop similar to how Dune was filmed, this exhaustive walk the Doctor is on to find something to fix the TARDIS with would have actually felt exhaustive. And again, Russell has done this well before. Think back to the Planet of the Dead. The elderly were feeling overheated, the only respite from the heat was inside the bus, and that was conveyed excellently. So why this fell so short is inexcusable. The fear that the Toymaker has of Sutek is unconvincing. Someone capable of destroying universes shouldn't fear a being that can be killed with time magic. The Toymaker's fear of Sutek feels like a letdown. Also, if he was so afraid, why would he get so close to him by interacting and almost coaxing the Doctor? I would have preferred an antagonist who is humanoid but acts out in vivid detail, showing an obsessive nature towards the Doctor. This would add depth and nuance to their interaction, making the climax much more compelling. For instance, Sutek could have been someone who even the Toymaker feared, not because of his power, but because of how obsessive and intelligent he is. someone who wasn't born a real god outside of time, but who carved his way up to the top, and when he has an obsession, he is unrelenting, and he observes, and there is something perverse about it. And I would have been happy that even at the ending, he continues to wait. All he wanted from the Doctor was the fear of being observed fully, not knowing what he will do next, and not being able to do anything about it either. Several plot elements are incoherent and poorly explained. The significance of the 73 yards is never addressed, and the villain is too easily defeated. Additionally, the desolate landscape and the crashed memory TARDIS are never adequately explained, leaving viewers confused. We were never explained, whether through direct exposition or subtext, why they landed on the desolate planet. Briefly showing how they ended up there and why they needed to repair the TARDIS would have provided much needed context. Here's what I think happened. I think they cut so much from the original that they didn't watch through and realise that there was so much left unexplained. It's a patchwork episode, with missing clips that give important information. Furthermore, the narrative leaves too many loose ends, making the story feel unfinished. Important plot points are introduced but not resolved, leaving the audience with more questions than answers. This lack of resolution is particularly frustrating in a story that relies heavily on its plot to drive the action forward. A more carefully constructed narrative would have addressed these issues, providing a clearer and more satisfying conclusion to the story. The episode suffers from a lack of subtext and context. While less exposition can be effective, the narrative fails to convey crucial information through visuals or dialogue. This results in a disjointed story that is hard to follow. JJK does subtext wonderfully, but here there was no context, making the plot difficult to understand. Why can the special rope attach to something that can become incorporeal? Why, if it's so strong, can shutting a door rip it apart? And again, why the fuck are they on Agua Santina? The ending is another weak point. The fairy tale-like resolution of Ruby finding her mother feels cheap and unrealistic. A more nuanced approach would have been for Ruby's mother to express her inability to handle the guilt, adding depth to their reunion, and perhaps giving a reason for Ruby to stay on the TARDIS. Perhaps she got a conclusion she hadn't hoped for, despite throughout her run giving off a vibe that she didn't care that her mother didn't want her, and all she wanted to know was where she was from. But it would hurt in a way she isn't quite comfortable with approaching yet, and so, like the Doctor, she will run away, until one day they have to deal with it. It ties in perfectly with the Doctor as well, and his granddaughter. The perfect unrealistic resolution does not align with the rest of the story's tone. Additionally, the ending fails to address several key plot points, leaving the story feeling incomplete. The resolution should have tied up loose ends and provided a satisfying conclusion to the characters' arcs. Instead, it leaves the audience with unresolved questions and a sense of dissatisfaction. Because if Ruby's mother truly is normal, then at the very end he could have at least mentioned why the fabric of the universe has become so thin, and it's something that needs to be dealt with because other monsters may have seeped through. A more carefully crafted ending would have addressed these issues, providing a more coherent and emotionally resonant conclusion. This episode also has consistency issues. For example, the Doctor's hesitation to kill Sutekh contradicts his earlier actions, such as impaling the Goblin King. Additionally, the Smart Rope's failure due to the TARDIS door closing feels unrealistic, given its supposed strength. There needs to be an explanation that the rope, despite Sutekh being able to become incorporeal, could cling onto him and prevent that. And it should have been mentioned that unlike other gods, this one started as an Osiran basking in time energy, and so unlike true gods, could be killed with the very same time energy. Furthermore, the narrative fails to maintain consistency in character behavior and motivations. Characters act in ways that contradict their established traits, making their actions feel arbitrary and unmotivated. This inconsistency undermines the story's credibility and makes it difficult for the audience to invest in the characters and their journey. A more consistent portrayal of character behavior would have strengthened the narrative and made the story more engaging. The character development is lacking in some areas. The Toymaker's fear of Sutekh should have been more compelling, perhaps by emphasizing Sutekh's unique qualities and his obsessive nature. Furthermore, Ruby's fixation on her mother feels out of place given the larger stakes at hand. Ruby's insistence on seeing her mother despite the monster in front of her feels disproportionate. Moreover, the characters' relationships lack the depth and complexity needed to make their interactions compelling. The narrative should have explored the characters' motivations, fears, and desires in more detail, providing a richer and more nuanced portrayal of their relationships. This would have added emotional depth to this story and make the characters' journey more engaging for the audience. Instead, they made us think that they were power creeping. Additionally, the narrative misses the opportunity to explore the character's emotional journey in more detail. Moments of emotional significance are glossed over or not given enough attention, making it difficult for the audience to connect with the characters and their struggles. This has happened throughout the season, with the first trans character's only addition to her role is critiquing someone's pronoun misuse and a very quick and abrupt enlightenment claiming that in the span of 50 minutes she finally felt herself, where a character like Captain Jack has been shown to have other character traits and come off really cool and just so happen to be bisexual. A more careful exploration of these emotional moments would have added depth and resonance to the story, making it more impactful. I think what was interesting to leave on a better note is Ibrahim turning into Christopher. The fact that he stood unfazed by the shattering glass, subtly showing us he's more than meets the eye. The brilliant performance that Gemma Redgrave as Kate Lethbridge Stewart gave as she signed off, and the amazing performance Cian Clifford gave as the mother. Forgetting things was so convincing, and it was truly sad. But ultimately, all these positives weren't enough.